The sand was red dot, not from the sun, which never shone through the thick smoke above, but from the dried blood of thousands who had died here. The arena of 1,000 species stood in the heart of the Krathi Empire. It was bigger than a city. Shaped like a broken ring, its walls rose into the dark sky, full of sharp edges and glowing banners. All around, aliens of every kind sat in rows, screaming, drinking, placing bets. Some were small and insect-like. Others were huge, covered in metal or fur. All came to watch one thing: war. A trumpet blast echoed through the arena, deep and cruel. Then a voice, sharp as a knife, cut across the noise. "Welcome to the Blood Games." The crowd roared. Fire burst from metal towers. Combat drones flew overhead, beaming the scene across the stars to millions watching from far worlds. The Krathi Emperor sat on his bone-carved throne, forearms crossed, yellow eyes glowing. Around him stood guards, slaves, and nobles. This was more than a sport. Tit was power. The winner of the Blood Games brought glory to their species. The loser brought shame and death. Today, the announcer boomed. "We begin with the newest species in the games, one that dared to join with no weapons, no armor, and only one warrior." The crowd laughed. A few booed. Some threw rotten food at the ground. They called themselves humans. From the far end of the arena, a metal door groaned open. Smoke spilled out. A shadow stepped forward. He looked small, no armor, no glowing eyes, no sharpened claws. Just a man, bare-chested, arms scarred, feet bare, dirty bandages around his fists. Blood dried on his face. He squinted at the bright arena lights, then walked forward, slow and calm, like he wasn't entering a death match. But a memory. The crowd jeered. "Send out the real fighter. Is that it? Put him down quick." But the Emperor leaned forward. This human was strange. There was no fear in his walk, no hesitation. It's just steady, silent rage, like something deep inside had broken a long time ago and never healed. The announcer tried to keep the mood light, facing the human Droxcar, the spine-breaker. Of the Threxian brood, 10 victories, no losses. Another gate opened. A monster stepped out, 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray scales, twin blades growing from his forearms. His armor clanked with every step. The crowd cheered wildly. Bloodlust filled the air. The human Jack Ronin stopped in the center of the arena. He cracked his neck, then looked up. His eyes were cold, the kind of cold that comes after too many lost friends, too many broken bones, and too many betrayals. The kind of cold that didn't need weapons. Droxcar roared and charged. Jack didn't move. The blade swung down, and then he ducked. 1 step forward. A punch fast as lightning straight to the side of Droxcar's knee. A loud crack. The beast screamed. The crowd gasped. Jack stepped around him like a ghost, grabbed one arm and twisted another crack. Droxcar dropped to one knee. Before he could react, Jack's elbow slammed into his throat. The alien coughed. Choke then hit the ground. Switching silence, the crowd froze. The fight had lasted less than 10 seconds. No weapons, no armor, just fists. Just fury. The Krathi Emperor slowly clapped, one hand at a time. The rest of the arena followed, unsure at first, then louder, then wild. Jack didn't smile. He didn't raise his arms. He just turned and walked back to the gate. Inside, the announcer's voice returned, nervous now. Victory to the human. Well fought. Well, strange. But victory? Behind the arena walls, Krathi, scientists, and commanders stared at the footage. "He's not enhanced," one said. "No cybernetics. No gene mods," another hissed. Then how did he move like that? He shattered the Threxian's bones with his hands. An older Krathi, with a long scar across his mouth, leaned forward. "Send in the fear trial next. But sir, do it." Jack sat in his holding cell. It wasn't really a room. Just for force walls, a metal bench, and a floor that sometimes sparked if he moved too fast. He sat still, breathing slow. He remembered Earth, the dust, the fire. He remembered the Crathy ships in the sky. He remembered his squad burning. He remembered his capture. 3 years in a Crathy prison camp. Electroshocks, sleep deprivation, pain drugs, silence chambers. But they didn't break him. They taught him something. Pain is a teacher. Fear is a tool. Rage is a weapon. A small drone hovered. Near him, it scanned his body. No wounds, no implants, just muscle and will. The drone beeped and left. Jack closed. His eyes, another fight was coming. Good. He wasn't here to win a tournament. He was here to bring it. Down from the inside. In the cells next to his other warriors watched him. A lion-headed alien whispered. He's not normal, a feathered reptile replied. He doesn't blink. Did you notice he never blinks? I heard humans are weak, said a metal-faced cyborg. But that one fights like something's chasing him. They went quiet as Jack stood and stretched. He could hear the crowd above, the noise, the chants. He could feel it building, but they didn't know what was coming. They thought the human was just a freak, just a surprise. They didn't know he was. The start of something much worse. Not for the fighters, for the Empire. The Crathy nobles met in secret chambers deep beneath the Emperor's palace. He shouldn't be standing. He survived poison gas, psychic attacks, rage hormones, and pain loops. This isn't strength. This is something else. Draxel. The lead xenobiologist tapped the side of his screen. You're right. He's not strong in the way we measure it. It's not logical. It's not tactical. He zoomed in on Jack's face. Still, quiet, bruised, but burning with something primal. He's broken. The room was silent. Draxel leaned in. And that's why he's winning. Main story. Jack Ronan's cell lights clicked on. No warning, no rest. The guards didn't speak. He stood ready. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His arms ached. His ribs were bruised. But when the door opened, he walked out like it didn't matter. Because it didn't. Not to him. Pain didn't. Stop, Jack. It guided him. Trial of the whips. In the arena. A new challenge waited. Duel of weapons, the announcer called. Plasma whips, flexible, razor sharp, and hot enough to cut through armor. The crowd cheered. The Crathy loved this event. Every species that had ever fought in it carried their own custom weapon. Jack stepped into the arena with nothing. In his hands, the plasma whips were handed to the other fighter, a gleaming insectoid champion from the glass. Winds of Siderax. Fast, tall, forearms. And very angry Jack just watched. The moment the bell rang. The alien charged, whips glowing hot. One snapped toward Jack's chest. He ducked. The other whip lashed at his leg. He stepped into it. It caught his side-burned flesh, hissed. Jack grabbed the whip's handle while it was still slicing into his ribs. With his free hand, he punched the alien one square in the thorax. Bones cracked. The crowd gasped. Brutal simplicity. Jack didn't fight to show off. He didn't spin. He didn't roar. He broke things. He tore the whip from the alien's hand, wrapped it around his opponent's leg, and pulled hard, dragging the fighter across the sand. A brutal elbow to the jaw. A knee to the chest. Another punch. Another even. When the alien stopped moving, Jack didn't stop. The guards had to sound the cease horn. He stood up, blood running from his side, breathing hard, but eyes calm. The plasma whip still hummed in his hand. Glowing red-hot, he dropped it, didn't even look at it, and walked away. In the control tower, Draxel watched in silence. We tried to give him a weapon. Shh. One noble muttered. Draxel shook his head. He is the weapon. Back. In the cell halls, the alien prisoners were no longer silent. They whispered his name now. Passed messages through the pipes. Scratched human words into the walls. Jack Ronan, he bleeds, but he stands. A three-eyed warrior from the mines of Vera knelt in his cell and said, he's not fighting to survive. He's fighting for something else. For us? Another asked. Maybe Maybe for himself. But either way, he's showing us. How? Flashback. The breaking point late that night. Jack stared at the wall of his cell. A drop of blood ran down his arm. He remembered Earth again, not just the war. But the moment it ended, his commanding officer had given the order to stand down. But the Crathy ships didn't stop firing. Jack watched the cities fall. His family, gone. He had screamed until his voice broke, and in that moment, he changed. He wasn't a soldier. Anymore, he became something else, something colder, the kind of human the galaxy wasn't ready for. Final scene, in the war room. Emperor slammed his fist into the table. "This is no longer entertainment," he growled. "This is infection. End him." Draxel hesitated. He's popular now. Too popular. If we kill him too openly, then kill him quietly. Pit him against the beast of Karos, the war minister hissed. No one survives. That the Emperor nodded. Do it. The cage was lowered in the dead of night. Even the crowd didn't know. No trumpets, no music. It's no fanfare, just steel grinding against steel. Inside the cage was the beast of KHA Ross. No one had seen it in years. Not after what it did during the last trial, ripping apart 7 fighters in under a minute, then breaking through the arena walls. Its claws were fused with star metal. Its flesh was thick as tank armor. Its eyes didn't blink. Even Crathy. Soldiers refused to feed it without drones, and now they were sending Jack Ronan in. "Unarmed, he won't last 5 seconds," said one noble. But Draxel said nothing. He watched the footage at Jack.com, patient, deliberate. "This is a mistake," he whispered, but it was too late. The beast had already been dropped, and Jack was already walking in. Main story. The arena lights were dimmed to hide what was happening. They didn't want the galaxy to see Jack fail only to report it after it was over. He stood at the gate, shoulders bruised, blood caked along. His ribs? He didn't ask what was behind the door. He didn't care, because the worst monster he'd ever seen looked just like him. The beast awakens when the steel doors opened. A sound rolled out, low, guttural. Shaking the walls, then came the snarl. The beast of Karos stood over 12 feet tall, arms thick like pillars, spikes down its back. Its mouth never closed, showing rows of black teeth that pulsed like machines. It sniffed the air, then saw him. Jack didn't flinch. He didn't run. He whispered, "Come on then." The fight that should have ended him. The beast charged like a battering ram. Jack sidestepped. Barely. A claw tore open the ground where he'd stood. Another slash grazed his shoulder. Blood flew. Jack rolled, came up behind the beast, and jumped on its back. He had no blade, no rope, no armor, just 2 fists, and one mission: survive. He wrapped his arm around the beast's throat and squeezed. It thrashed, slammed against the walls, rolled. Tried to smash him. Jack held on, even when its claws tore into his side. Even when his own breath started to fade. He held on because he wasn't trying to beat it. He was trying to outlast it. The moment it changed, the beast threw Jack into the wall. He hit hard, cracked ribs, torn leg. He couldn't stand straight. Blood poured from his mouth, and yet he smiled. The beast looked confused. Jack spat on the ground. "That all you got?" And then he ran toward it. Not away. Toward the creature roared and swiped. Jack ducked under the blow, grabbed the arm mid-swing, and twisted. A sickening crunch. The beast screamed. Jack punched its face. Again and again, he didn't stop, until the creature fell. Behind the scenes, the Crathy commanders stared in silence. The nobles looked sick. One whispered, "He shouldn't be alive." Draxel nodded. "He isn't fighting to win. He isn't fighting to escape." He looked at the screen. Jack, barely standing, covered in blood. But victorious. He's fighting to burn the whole system down. The galaxy responds. On every planet where the match was secretly broadcast. Crowds gathered around screens. Slaves cried out. Rebels slammed their fists against tables. He did it. He beat the monster. He's one of us. The chant began on a prison moon, then spread like wildfire. Rage. Rage, rage. In the arena prison, that night, the guards heard something strange in the holding cells. Not whispers, not cries. Drumming, fists tapping against walls, against pipes, against steel beds. A rhythm. A message. Jack sat on his bench, listened, and finally smiled. He'd sparked something. Not a rebellion, not yet, but a belief. Final scene. The Emperor slammed his fists against the edge of his throne. No more trials. End this. Publicly. Make an example of him. Draxel stepped forward slowly. There's only one opponent left that might finish him. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. Who? Draxel didn't blink. Me. The Krathi medical lab was quiet. Too quiet for a war empire. Screens flashed images from the last fight. Jack Ronan, the unarmed human, moved frame by frame on the main monitor. His punch. The alien's shattered knee. The finishing elbow too. The throat. No hesitation. No wasted motion. The head researcher Draxel. A tall Krathi with 4 eyes and a mind like a blade. Watched the replay for the 100th time. This shouldn't be possible, he muttered. Another scientist, smaller. And nervous, looked at the scan results. He's just ... human. No implants. No boosts. His muscle density is below average for our warriors. Draxel hissed. Then why did Draxel collapse like a child? The room fell silent. Because no one knew, and that terrified them. Main story. Jack Ronan sat alone in his holding cell, staring at the wall. The guards hadn't spoken since his first match. They didn't taunt him anymore. They didn't laugh. They just stared like he was something alien. Above, the crowd prepared for the next round, the second trial. The fear gauntlet. This one wasn't about strength. It was about what lived in the mind. The fear gas had been used for centuries by the Krathi, an invisible mist that triggered the deepest terror in any living brain. It broke even the strongest champions. Now it was Jack's turn. Inside the arena, flames burst from the ground. Green mist began to flow through hidden vents. Lights dimmed from the walls. Speakers crackled. Welcome to your nightmare. Human. Jack walked out, shirtless, calm. Eyes steady, the gas wrapped around him. The crowd leaned forward. A massive screen showed his heartbeat, expecting it to spike, expecting him to collapse, to cry out like so many others. But nothing happened. His heartbeat slowed. His breathing deepened. He stood there. In silence, inside his mind, Jack wasn't seeing the arena anymore. He was in the jungle. Earth 10 years ago, his squad surrounded. His best friend shot. He remembered dragging him for 3 miles with a shattered leg. Then the prison, camp, electro needles, starvation, screams that wouldn't stop. He saw it all again, but he didn't fall. He clenched his fists, not from fear but rage. He'd lived his nightmares. The Krathi were just late to the party. Back in the control room, he's not reacting, said one technician. Impossible, another said. The gas worked on a core beast last month. He's not immune, Draxel whispered. He's used to it. The next opponent, a second gate opened. A fear-mutated alien tentacled, twisted, screaming in agony charged at Jack. Foaming at the mouth, Jack didn't blink. The creature struck with a screech, flailing razor arms. Jack stepped under one swipe, grabbed a limb, twisted hard. A crack echoed, the thing shrieked. The next strike missed. Jack slammed a knee into its jaw, then an elbow to the side of the head. The creature dropped, dead silence in the stands. He didn't just win again, he made it look easy. Crowd reaction, across. The galaxy species watched in awe. On a mining station in Vorticix, workers stopped to watch the replay. On a rebel world, young warriors whispered, "Did you see the human?" On Krathi Prime, nobles leaned closer to their screens. The fear that was meant to crush Jack didn't even scratch him. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Draxel stood before the Emperor. "We must test him further," the scientist said. "There's something inside this human, something we don't understand." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. Test his limits. Push him to the edge, but do not let him win the games. Yes, Majesty. Final scene. Jack sat back. In his cell, a fresh cut across his shoulder. Blood on his knuckles, he didn't flinch. A small alien prisoner in the next cell, with thin arms and glassy eyes, whispered, "Why aren't you afraid?" Jack didn't answer at first, then he turned. "I ran out of fear a long time ago." Leaned against the wall and waited, because he knew the Krathi weren't done. But neither was he. 3 guards held, a struggling warrior down as the syringe plunged into his neck. The alien's eyes rolled back. He screamed, claws flailing wildly, then curled into a ball, sobbing. That was test subject number 14. He'd survived 6 wars, 2 death moons. It didn't last 10 seconds. The Krathi scientists whispered among themselves as they stood in the observation room, above the arena floor. Raise the dose. Human physiology is stubborn. Inject him directly. A new syringe filled with night fear serum hissed as it slid into its chamber. It was illegal across most of the galaxy. Even the Krathi used it only in secret experiments. It paralyzes. Courage, one scientist muttered. It makes your worst memories feel real, permanent. The Emperor gave one nod, injected into the human spine. The arena doors slid open once more. Jack Ronan stood there calm. As usual, he didn't know the serum had already been released in the gas he was breathing. He didn't care. Main story, inside the arena, the sky had darkened. Fake lightning flashed overhead. The ground had been made uneven, filled with jagged rocks and illusionary terrain to disorient. Fog slithered around Jack's ankles. The crowd was silent. They weren't here to cheer. They were here to witness Jack. Took a single step forward. His chest tightened. Inside Jack's mind, suddenly, he wasn't in the arena anymore. He was back in the prison camp, strapped to a wall, electric rods burning into his side, his mouth sewn shut. The Krathi interrogator leaning close, whispering, "Tell us about your planet, about Earth." He saw the faces of his dead squad again. He saw fire. He saw his own hands, bloody, shaking, tied. He heard screaming that wouldn't stop. The serum worked. It brought it all back. All the pain, the shame, all the loss. But the Krathi didn't understand one thing. Jack didn't fear this memory. He lived in it. The fight. A new challenger entered the arena. A 6-limbed psychic beast called Vraxil, known as the Mirror Mind. Vraxil could project illusions directly into a victim's brain-stacking horrors on top of hallucinations. He snarled. Mind lashes cracking through the air, reaching for Jack's mind. Jack's knees buckled. For the first time, he staggered. The Krathi crowd leaned forward, excited. The human was finally breaking. Jack fell to one knee. Images swirled, earth burning, his mother screaming, his own grave with his name carved into it. Then Jack opened his eyes. Bloodshot. Burning. He growled deep and low, not like a man, but something older. And then he spoke. "You're showing me hell, heroes. I grew up there." Turning the tide, Jack charged. Vraxil's psychic attacks slammed into his mind blades of terror, hammers of fear. But Jack didn't stop. Every strike hit a wall of something the Krathi couldn't measure. Not muscle, not tech, not armor, just pure will. Jack dodged the first real tentacle strike, grabbed a second, twisted. The creature shrieked. Jack yanked the arm down, drove his knee into its core and spun it over his shoulder. Dust flew. He leaped forward, wrapped his bandaged hands around Vraxil's skull, and squeezed. Bones cracked. The arena went dead silent. Vraxil's body slumped to the ground. Jack stood over it, chest heaving. The mist around him faded. His mind was bleeding, but he was still on his feet. Control room reaction. Draxel's hands trembled. He resisted a direct for injection. No one of the others whispered. He didn't resist it. He devoured it. Elsewhere in the galaxy, on a slave planet, young rebels watched the replay. He faced down the psychic and won. "What is he not a soldier?" one said quietly. Not a fighter, a weapon, said another, one that bleeds. Back in the cell, Jack sat with his head resting against the wall. His knuckles were raw, his heart was still racing, but his eyes were open. A faint sound echoed in the hall metal, tapping against the wall. It was the prisoner in the next cell. It's tapping in rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. A code. An old Earth pattern. Jack turned. Another prisoner had picked up the signal, and another, across the block. The rhythm grew. They weren't just watching anymore. They were listening. The Emperor lay broken, his blade shattered, his armor dented, his breath shallow. The crowd had not moved. Not a cheer. Shh, not a sound. Just eyes, watching a moment they never believed possible. Above them, camera drones spun, silently broadcasting to every system in the Krathi Empire. And beyond, in that silence, a signal went out. One voice, whispered into a prison pipe. It traveled through vents, tunnels, halls, ships, and lit the fire, not of rebellion, of revolution. Main story, Jack Ronan didn't stay in the arena. He didn't raise his arms. He didn't look back. He limped through the gate as if the battle had never ended, as if he were still fighting, because to him it wasn't over. Not until the chains were off. For everyone. The collapse begins, across the Empire. The systems cracked. Krathi slave planets rose. The outer fleets cut off from command began to mutiny. Even Krathi soldiers, once loyal, now whispered the name Ronin. The empire that had ruled for centuries with iron, fear, and silence was suddenly drowning in hope. Hope shaped like a scarred man with nothing but fists and fury. The council tries to retaliate. Inside the palace walls, surviving Krathi lords screamed at each other, "Call in reinforcements! Shut the feeds! Declare martial law!" But none of them realized what Jack already knew. They were too late. Because once the people saw one human take down their god king, they knew the truth. The Krathi bled just like anyone else. And more importantly, they could fall. Jack's final stand, as guards surrounded the palace walls. Trying to trap him inside? Jack didn't run. He walked through the front gate, bruised, limping, unarmed, but not alone. Behind him, doors opened, cells emptied. Aliens from hundreds of worlds, fighters, prisoners, rebels followed. Some had claws. Some dragged chains behind them. But they followed him. The human. Because he'd done what no one else had the courage to try. He stood and kept standing. Final speech arena broadcast. The central tower fell silent as Jack stood before a stolen mic patched into the arena's master system. He spoke to every world the Krathi had ever ruled. Every slave. Every fighter. Every child told they were weak. His voice was cracked, dry but strong. I came here alone. I had no weapons, no armor. They tried to break me, and I broke back. Not for revenge. For proof that we're not slaves. So that we don't need crowns to lead. That even bleeding, one human can make an empire fall. Then he dropped the mic and turned away. The signal cut, but the spark had done its work. Epilogue. Across the stars 1 year later, the Krathi Empire no longer exists. It fractured, shattered from within. New alliances rose built from species that had once knelt in chains, and somewhere on a green, quiet planet far from the Starza. Man walks a dirt road. He has no weapons, no armor, just scars, just silence. Just peace. Final scene. A group of children, alien and human, run past. Him, laughing, one stops. Wide-eyed. Are you? Him, Jack kneels. No, he says softly. I'm just a man. The child tilts her head. But you beat the whole empire? Jack smiles faintly. No, we did. He stands and walks on. Because sometimes the strongest weapon, simply a human who refuses to fall. The end. HFY Sci-Fi. No weapon. No armor. Just rage. The human one, anyway. The room was cold. Far below the arena, in a private Krathi war lab. Draxel stood in silence. He stared at his reflection in a polished slab of star metal.
Ow!
Dozens of surgical scars ran down his body. Cybernetic implants buzzed beneath his skin. Neural nodes blinked across his spine. He wasn't just a scientist anymore. He'd been preparing for this moment for 10 years. Ever since the Krathi lost their first war against Earth, they had beaten humans back then. But not completely. Not him, Jack. Ronan was the proof, living, bleeding, and still walking, and Draxel was done watching. He activated the final protocol. Cybernetic limbs slid into place. His heart rate slowed. His vision sharpened. Then he looked to the arena above. "Let's see what's left of your rage, human." Ronan sat in the arena center. No trial this time, no monsters. No beasts, just him. The arena was empty. No crowd, no announcer. Something was wrong. He stood slowly, bruises covering every inch of his skin. His right arm trembled. His left leg dragged. Slightly, but his eyes still burning. Then a door opened, and Draxel walked in, wearing no royal armor. No crown, just a dark robe covering a frame laced with metal wires and glowing veins. "The final test begins. I've studied your kind for decades," Draxel said calmly. "I know what you fear." Jack didn't speak. "I know what. Pain shaped you, still silent. I even know what your heart rate was when you watched your planet burn." Jack finally answered, voice like gravel. "Then you already know how this ends." The duel, flesh versus Machina Drakel, struck first faster than any creature Jack had ever seen. A cybernetic blade slashed through the air. Jack dodged barely. The blade caught his side. Blood poured. Another strike came, this one from a mechanical arm with crushing strength. Jack rolled, ducked, kicked at the knee. Metal didn't bend, but Draxel flinched. Jack saw it. This wasn't just tech. It was living Metaland, living things. "Still feel pain?" Jack adapted fast. That's what he did. That's what humans do. He started striking the joints, not the limbs, not the core, the weak spots. The fight raged for minutes, metal versus flesh, speed versus instinct. Jack was bleeding from 4 places, but he kept standing. The turning point. Draxel finally landed a hard blow. Jack slammed into a pillar, coughing blood. "You can't win," the Krathi growled. "You're breaking." Slowing, Jack wiped his mouth, laughed. "You think that matters?" He stood up. Limbs gone, eyes wild. "You keep thinking rage is a weakness." He stepped forward. But rage remembers. Rage learns, survives. He drove forward with everything he had, fists pounding, knees slamming, elbows cracking until finally Jack caught one of the cyber arms, twisted it, and ripped it from the socket. Draxel screamed. Jack slammed the arm into his face. The arena shakes. The Krathi commanders watched in horror from their sealed tower. "This isn't a fight anymore." "No," whispered one. "It's a message." Jack broke Draxel's leg with a savage. Stompy dragged the twitching body to the center of the arena, then looked up at the cameras knowing the galaxy was watching. He raised his blood-covered fist and pointed it at the sky, across the stars, on prison moons. Rebels screamed in joy, on Krathi slave worlds. Workers threw off their chains. On neutral systems, leaders held emergency meetings, and on Earth. The Defense Council leaned in, watching. One general whispered, "We didn't send him." The admiral replied, "We didn't have to." The new chant, from cell to cell, world to world, species to species, the weapon that bleeds. The weapon that bleeds. Jack had become something else now. Not just a man, not just a human. He was hope wrapped in fury. Final scene. As Draxel was dragged away, barely alive, he hissed, You're just one man." Jack stared at him. "No." He turned to the camera. "To the galaxy. I'm what happens when one man is left behind too long." He walked away, still bleeding but unbroken. The Krathi Emperor stared at the screen, lips tight, claws twitching. He watched the footage again. Draxel, his most trusted mind, broken in front of billions. His cybernetic body ripped apart. Blood spilled like oil in the sand. And above him, the human, still alive, still fighting, still winning. The Emperor rose from his throne. "This ends now," he hissed. "I will not be mocked by a flesh bag with cracked ribs and a death wish." The guards backed away. "I want the cameras on. Across every world, every sector. Let the galaxy see me end of myself." Main story. Jack Ronan stood in the middle of the arena. He had been stitched up, barely. His body ached. His left eye swollen shut. His right leg dragged behind him like a dead thing, but he stood tall. They tried to kill him with monsters. They tried to poison his mind. They tried fear. They tried machines. Now they were out of ideas, so they sent the king. The final round begins. Trumpets blared. Banners unfurled. For the first time in centuries. The Emperor of Krathi entered the arena personally. He wore obsidian armor covered in jewels, a curved blade as long as Jack's body in one hand, and a shield made of collapsed star matter in the other. The crowd roared. But it wasn't the same sound as before. It wasn't joy. It was uncertainty. Some cheered the Emperor, but more waited for Jack. A battle bigger than one man. The announcer's voice shook as he spoke. Glory to the Empire. And to its challenger, the human known as Jack Ronan. The Emperor stepped forward, teeth bared. "Your war ends here, animal." Jack wiped blood from his mouth. "No, it starts here." The fight that shook the Empire, the Emperor struck first fast. Brutal. Trained Jack barely dodged, rolling to the side, his ribs screaming. Another blow came. Sparks flew as the Emperor's blade dug into stone. Jack closed the distance. Fist flying a jab. A hook. A low kick. The Emperor blocked it all. He was stronger, smarter, healthier, but Jack had something else. Nothing left to lose. Blow after blow. Jack was thrown across the arena. He stood. He was slammed into a pillar. He stood. The Emperor stabbed him in the leg. Jack screamed and stood. The crowd leaned in breath held. They watched a man who should have died 10 times. Keep coming, bleeding, burning, alive. The turning point. The Emperor laughed. "You're finished." Jack spat in his face and whispered, "So were my people." But we kept going. The transmission broadcasted in full. 4. The first time ever, edited billions watched the Emperor fall back and the human rise again. A miner dropped his tools. A young rebel gripped a weapon. A general on a hidden world ordered every screen tuned in and whispered now. The fire spreads. Explosions rocked the outer edge of Krathi. Space. The rebellion had begun. But it didn't start with weapons. It started with one man bleeding, limping, standing his ground. The final strike. The Emperor charged in fury. Jack waited at the last second. He dodged under the blade, grabbed the Emperor's arm. Twisted, dash, snapped, then used the broken bone to strike his face. The mask shattered. The Emperor hit the ground. Jack stood over him. The camera drone circled. The crowd was silent, and then Dash chanting low at first, then louder, "Jack. Jack." Final scene. The Emperor reached for his fallen blade. Jack kicked it away. "You want to rule? Jack said, his voice cold. Rule with fear? He looked around the arena. You rule nothing now. He turned his back and walked away. Guards didn't stop him. Commanders didn't fire. Even the Krathi nobles looked down, shamed. Because this wasn't a prisoner anymore, this was a symbol. And symbols are harder to kill than kings.